Have you ever felt this deep inner hunger that nothing seems to satisfy? Not success, not stuff, not even pleasure. Well, today we're going to explore a spiritual diagnosis for that exact feeling.
Think about it for a second. When you're thirsty, that points to the existence of water, right? A growling stomach, well, that proves food is a real thing. But what about that other kind of hunger? That deep ache in your soul for something more? What does that hunger point to?
Well, it turns out, just like physical hunger proves food exists, this spiritual hunger is basically evidence of a spiritual reality. It's not some bug in our system, it's a feature. It's like a built-in signpost pointing us towards something so much bigger than ourselves.
So what is this spiritual hunger really? It's been described as this profound, almost primal cry for eternity.
Deep down inside us, there's this voice that just rejects anything temporary. It doesn't want pain, it doesn't want separation or loss, it wants the infinite. It literally screams, as the slide says, Ebed, eternity. That's the sound of our soul's truest, deepest nature.
And what happens when we ignore that cry? When the soul is left to starve? The consequences can be absolutely devastating. This spiritual starvation has actually been linked to some really severe psychological issues, from deep, knowing anxiety and bipolar disorders all the way to a despair so profound it can even lead to suicide. This is a spiritual crisis with very real, very painful symptoms.
Okay, so where does this profound hunger even come from? Well, the source material identifies a very specific spiritual organ responsible for it, what it calls the spiritual heart.
The technical term for this spiritual heart is latife-e rabbaniya. Now try to think of it as this subtle, divine faculty we all have. We're not talking about the muscle in your chest pumping blood, but the absolute core of our being, our primary connection to the divine, and the very source of that cry for eternity.
I love this analogy. Just like our physical heart has two circulations to pump blood, our spiritual heart does too. The small circulation is run by our intellect, our akal, which deals with the physical world around us. But the large circulation is our conscience, our vijdan, and that's what connects us to the vast, unseen spiritual world.
So the spiritual heart, this latife-e rabbaniya, is basically acting as a bridge. It connects our physical, seen world with that unseen spiritual reality. It's what helps us understand not just what things are, but what they truly mean.
All right, so how do we nourish this spiritual heart? First, we kind of need a user manual for our inner world. We have to get a handle on the anatomy of the soul.
We all know our 5 outer senses, right? They perceive the physical world. But the source here says we also have 5 inner senses: the heart, the spirit, the secret, the hidden, and the most hidden. And these faculties, they perceive the deeper reality, the truth that's hiding behind what we see and touch.
Here's a perfect way to think about it. Your eyes can see the colors and the shapes of a painting. That's your outer senses doing their job. But it takes your heart, your inner senses, to feel the artist's emotion, their intention, their soul. See the difference? One perceives the surface. The other grasps the very essence of it.
So, if our soul is hungry, how do we feed it? Let's walk through a really clear 4-step path for giving it the spiritual nutrition it's craving.
It all starts with our different inner parts. First, our irade, or our will, is nourished by worship. Second, our zihin, or our mind, gets fed by knowledge of the divine. And third, our hiss, our capacity for feeling, is sustained by love for the divine. Each part of us needs its own specific kind of spiritual food.
The 4th and final step is what nourishes the spiritual heart itself. This is the practice of mushahadet tula, which is basically a constant, living awareness that you are always, at every moment, in the presence of the divine. And that is the ultimate nourishment that brings true, lasting peace. So this brings us to a really fundamental choice, a fork in the road, which leads to one of 2 starkly different outcomes: a life of inner peace or a life of what's called heedlessness. This quote really says it all, doesn't it? There's a part of you that has an infinite longing. You could literally give it the entire world, all the money, all the power, all the pleasure, and it would still be empty. Why? Because it's simply made for something else entirely. And the 2 paths lead to these profoundly different places. On the left, you see the nourished soul. That person finds inner peace, spiritual strength. Worship actually starts to feel easy. But the starved soul, it's trapped in constant anxiety and deep despair, always chasing things that can never, ever satisfy it.
This state of spiritual starvation actually has a name, ghaflat, which translates to heedlessness. It's that state we get into when we forget our spiritual reality and we try to silence our soul's cry with a million worldly distractions.
This slide gives us the perfect analogy for ghaflat. It's like being offered an eternal diamond, lasting spiritual fulfillment, and instead you choose a cheap, breakable glass bottle, a fleeting worldly pleasure. It's a trade that just never, ever pays off in the long run. So, we end with this. That inner hunger, that deep longing we all feel, that's your soul's voice. It's always speaking, always pointing you towards something more. The only real question is, are you listening? And what is it asking for?